Thank you for joining us for this session of the Spark podcast hosted by Dynamic Lifecycle Innovations. We are excited to have three in-house experts joining us today who recently had the opportunity to speak on panels at ITAD Summit 2025. Following Dynamic's ITAD Company of the Year Award of 2024, we are very excited to be included on a variety of panel topics. We assembled our speakers here to go over the highlights of each of their panels, what they discussed, and what the major takeaways were. So without further ado, I'll introduce them. First, we'll have Miranda Monahan. She is our Director of Global Technology Partners at Dynamic Lifecycle Innovations and has over 25 years of industry experience. So welcome, Miranda. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Next, we will have Casey Dingfelder. Casey has been with Dynamic for over 14 years, and he is our VP of Business Strategies and Analytics. So thank you so much, Casey, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and last but not least is Ashley Foreman. She is our VP of Corporate Services, and she has been with Dynamic for almost 7 years now. So hello, Ashley, and thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to dive right into this here. So Miranda, you are going to be up first. And your topic, or the panel topic that you spoke on, was strengthening your partnership network, which we all know is very important within the ITAD industry. So if you could, please tell us about the top 3 key takeaways that you spoke about during that panel, or that you took away from your panel discussion from some of the other individuals there.
Sure, certainly. So it was an amazing ITAD Summit overall. We were speaking about partnerships, and one of the first key takeaway that I took from my panel was that the first question the moderator asked was, how many of you use partnerships in your day-to-day dealings with your clients? And like 98% of the room raised their hands. And it was a pretty packed audience. So I think one thing that I took away and that I'm seeing all day, every day in the ITAD space is that ITADs are using these partnerships to get them a seat at the table with their clients. So now using partnerships, they can execute on, pickups all over the globe. And it gives them scalability. So as their clients grow, they grow as well. And then from a logistics standpoint, it keeps overall costs down. So that was one key takeaway that I took overall. The other takeaway was the question was asked, what creates a successful partnership? Mm-hmm. And the number one thing that everybody said was communication. And, communication has to be clear, concise, and fluid, right? When you're dealing with a partner, because they're just an extension of your ITAD company and representing your brand at the end of the day. So, there has to have two-way dialogue, collaboration, transparency. And like I said, at the end of the day, it shows that that ITAD partner cares about your client as much as you do. Mm-hmm. And the last thing that I took away was they talked about, the recycling piece, and that recycling is a part of ITAD. And they asked us to speak about successful ITAD partnerships that we had. And while Dynamic has some great partnerships with OEMs, state and local governments, and large retailers, the one that I chose to highlight was our recycling is vertically integrated. So we're doing that recycling in-house. And that we're actually able to serve other ITADs. So even, because we take a holistic approach, we're helping our clients, with that transparency and doing all the destruction, and the downstream actually happens in-house, but we're doing that for other ITADs. So it helps the overall ecosystem altogether. So I thought that was pretty cool. Those are my 3 key takeaways.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think obviously we're cramming a whole panel discussion into just a couple minutes here of these key takeaways, but that's great to hear. And I think just kind of reflecting on what you talked about, one, absolutely. I mean, recycling is part of ITAD. Obviously, everybody has the intentions and the goal to reuse everything first. But then there is a portion of that maybe isn't able to. So having those good, strong connections, and if you're vertically integrated, they're right there in-house, which even just allows for even more of that connection. And also then going into the communication, I mean, your communication is just tied in and a lot closer knit with everybody, which is important both inside your own organization with the different partners that you have, but also then with your customers too. And one follow-up question that I have is your partner network that you typically deal with. What is the size of that? Because that can vary from ITAD vendor to ITAD vendor. So what does that partner network size look like for you?
Yeah, so we're able to reach over 120 countries globally, only using 12 partners. And the reason, we really do, there's a lot of risk in what we do, right? There's the data security piece, there's, chain of custody, there's the environmental piece. So we're very strategic in our partnerships. So we like them to have more than one location. We like them to be strategically located so they can get to other countries without incurring VATs. So we're choosy when we pick where, in fact, those locations are. But we're offering a risk mitigation program to our customers at the end of the day. So every partner, poses a bit of risk because we're not doing that ourselves, right? So we're very picky. Our onboarding process is very rigorous. I've been told we're as thorough as the OEMs. But yeah, we minimize the amount of partners we use globally.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And just talking about communication after that, how important it is to maintain really strong communication and thinking, with 12 partners, that's important. But thinking if you had, 50 or 60 partners, I can't even imagine trying to maintain the communication, the relationships across all of them. So that makes
Right.
sense to just have that really solid 12, a little bit of a smaller amount of partners that can really help in so many different ways. But to your point, are fully vetted and trusted, just as our companies and just the partners trust dynamic as well. So yeah, that's wonderful.
Exactly.
It's great insight.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We want to get to everybody here. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Casey. So Casey Dingfelder, your topic for your panel discussion was on understanding and operating in the current sustainability framework, which, wow, that's a focus right now and can be so many different paths that you take this down. So for you, what were the three key takeaways that you had from your panel discussion at ITAD Summit?
Yeah, one of the topics that we discussed was what were the primary drivers that drove companies to kind of adopt these more ESG structured practices. And so, really, what we talked about was it came down to regulatory. So, some of these companies are required to do Scope 1, Scope 2 reporting, some Scope 3 even. I think you have consumers now are wanting to align and support brands that are environmentally friendly, and other practices that are driving it. Team members, I mean, your employees want to work for a company that's doing good by the environment as well. And then lastly, I think there is some financial motivation. So some of the top performing mutual funds over the last decade have been ESG focused funds, and in order to qualify, you need to hit certain ESG benchmarks or metrics that these large financial firms are requiring. So companies are transforming themselves to be eligible for those types of funds. So, and then moving on, another top topic was what with ESG maturing into a business value driver, like what does that look like? So I think just evaluating the carbon footprint that your operation is taking up. So from a logistics standpoint, trying to find ways to lower those miles for your product and services to travel are obviously going to have a positive ESG impact. Looking at your power consumption, whether you're replacing, electricity with more renewable energy such as solar or wind, obviously are going to take down the carbon, and then just being more efficient in general. So when you're not wasting unnecessary resources, you're going to be lowering that impact. So I think it can be very motivating and serve two purposes of being good for the environment and also being positive for the business. And then just some of the sustainability impacts, being able to market that, kind of tout those achievements for both your team members and the consumers buying your product.
Mm-hmm.
Then lastly, we kind of just tied it up with there's some questions from the audience on how can some of these companies enter into this space and provide some of these ESG metrics, and then what are some of the top companies doing different, or how are they differentiating and winning at this. So I think if you're just starting off, the first step is just to really make sure you have clean, easy to consume data. When I say easy to consume, making it easy to understand, but also make it accessible for your customers that they can come pull it at any time. I
Yeah.
think the more you can verify and audit that what data you're producing and the outputs is credible, it's going to give more confidence in your customers that they could actually turn around and report that same data. So I think those are the two easy ways to kind of enter into the space, just making sure it's clean, it's easy to access, and then also just verifying and auditing it for credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And I think it's a space that is so, I guess, widening in the sense that so much more information is being put out about it. There's so many more opportunities. But to your point, easily digestible, easily attainable, and making sure that that happens for companies is really important too, because how do you know it's accurate? There's so much out there. And you want to make sure that it is fully vetted so that it's trusted information, you know? So I think that's great. I don't know if I can ask a follow-up question on it too. How do you, maybe from your experience or if you know from others too, how do you ensure that it's gone through a vetted process? What does that potentially look like? Or how do you ensure that trust with the reporting that you provide as an ITAD vendor or that others might provide to their customers as well?
Yeah, so we took the approach of having a third party carbon accounting firm actually review our methodology and kind of give a stamp of approval per se on the logic that we're using. I think the best way to just provide accurate reporting is just to get it third party verified. I mean, there's companies that specialize in this. It's going to be apples to apples when they're reviewing our methodology and other companies' methodology. So I think the more standardized you can align, it's going to be easier to interpret for everybody.
Yeah. And that's helpful too, because I think sometimes when you review the different reports from different people, it is how they're describing it one way versus a different way. But to your point, if it's all getting vetted by the third parties that follow the same standards, it provides some consistency to that reporting to easily evaluate those and make the right decision for yourself as a company.
Yep.
Great. All right. Well, we will thank you so much, Casey, for sharing all of those takeaways that you had from your panel. Very much appreciate it. Ashley, we will transition to you now. So Ashley Foreman had the opportunity to join the panel that focused on the inbound versus outbound balance. So thinking about that and the topics that you discussed over the questions or others of just the general panel discussion, what were your 3 key takeaways that you had from that panel discussion?
Thank you, Caitlin. So there were quite a few takeaways. It was hard to narrow it down to 3, but essentially the top 3 things that we really discussed were revolving around exposure management being at the core of your decision making and specifically mitigating risk for your customers. So we talked a lot about how minimizing exposure is priceless. And the panel was focused on just balancing exposure mitigation with returns and how you define those things, how do they show up from a priority perspective. And everybody on the panel all was grounded in the fact that minimizing exposure for our customers is top priority. And that exposure is across many different dimensions. There's data security, regulatory compliance, logistics and chain of custody, ESG, and then last but certainly not least, and probably one of the top ones actually, is brand and reputation. So for us, we're not going to sacrifice short-term decisions that might improve return and by return, I mean financial return, in order to and open us up for more risk. So that was, everybody on the panel had a lot of shared alignment with that and agreed that that has to be the decision-making framework and process. Risk exposure minimization first and maximization of returns second. And the other piece that we talked about with returns was around how you define returns. So returns, we often think about financial returns to our customers. So the revenue share that they receive on the sale of their equipment, but there's also other return that we focus on maximizing with our customers. So financial return, obviously, but also strategic and relationship concern or return between Dynamic and our customers. So from a strategic standpoint, Casey talked about ESG alignment and supporting the ESG goals for our customers. We take consultative approaches towards supporting them with projects or different refresh needs, adding new services that they may need. And that consultative value is a return for our customers. And then the relational component of that. So supporting and protecting their brand, their reputation with their customers. And really, as you know, Miranda talked a lot about partnerships, really cultivating and growing long-term partnerships is a return that our customers feel. And with talking about the maximization of returns, we talked a lot about measurement. And one of the things that we touched on was using programs to measure whether customers are achieving the return that they expect, being return on financial, strategic, relational components. And so we talked about our Voice of the Customer program and how we use things like NPS and CSAT scores, business reviews to have alignment conversations with our customers, which brings me to the last takeaway. And that was on really from a decision-making standpoint, talking about minimizing exposure, maximizing return. Decisions should be rooted in aligned values between our customers and Dynamics values. And so that was something that all of us agreed on, making sure that you are working with customers who value the same things. They don't want to make short-term risky decisions. An example of that being sending equipment to an uncertified downstream where they may be able to cut corners to get you more money back, but they're really exposing you from a risk standpoint. And so that was a big call out that for us, it's really important that we work with customers whose values align with ours, and that decision-making tree and priority framework is rooted in the same value. Here at Dynamic, our vision is to provide trusted sustainability for those who can't risk it. So we really want to focus on being able to provide that to our partners and our customers.
Yeah. And I'm assuming too, when you talk about the values, you know, the people who also value that trusted sustainability and they can't risk it. I mean, that's saying it right there. If that aligns with what they're focusing on for their ITAD vendor, I would think, yeah, that's really a great piece to talk about, to converse and just make sure you are aligned. Because if you're focusing on different things, initiatives, different strategies, there could absolutely be some misalignment there and cause some stress potentially. So it's great to have that focus on that alignment ahead of time too.
Yep.
Another key takeaway just from you talking to and reflecting back was just on the different returns. And I think this ties really well into a little bit of what Miranda talked about too. On, you know, yes, there is a huge focus on the financial returns, right? That's important to everybody's success. But then balancing that with the relationship returns as well. And how you mentioned it and is, you know, long-term relationships, there's a huge benefit to having long-term relationships. There's, you know, less change of vendors, there's more consistency, there's, you know, what you're going to expect. And through Voice of Customer programs, through that feedback circle, making sure that you stay aligned with the values, but also with the different strategies, and taking that consultative method is, I'm sure, really helpful for people as they work through different projects or whatever it might be with their vendors, to make sure that they're staying aligned, but can just continue their relationship past a 1-year contract and, you know, going on to 5-10 years and just having a great relationship long term with them. So that's fantastic. Those just different focuses that people can do to ensure that those great relationships with their ITAD vendors.
I agree.
Great. Well, we have been rolling and we've got one more question for each of you guys too, but to start out with, thank you so much for everything you shared. My last question, just for each of you too, and we'll kick it off with you again, Miranda. But my last question here for each of you is, what is the biggest takeaway or favorite part of ITAD Summit 2025? So the conference in total, what was your favorite takeaway or favorite part of the conference?
Sure. I would just say I always love going to the ITAD Summit conference because it gives you so much perspective, like different perspective, right? And you're constantly getting to see these different speakers and some of the things that they're saying and things that, you take away and you're like, hey, I might need to implement that, or let me look at that. I know I did from even just the panel I was on. And I just love seeing like how many ITAD companies there are and how it's just such a thriving industry. So those are mine.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Casey, we'll hop over to you next. What was your, I guess, biggest takeaway or favorite part of the conference this year?
Yeah, for me, I think it was just the amount of international presence that was at the show. It seems to really be growing year over year. You have repair companies, you have ITAD processors, you have software offerings. So there's just appears to be more and more international interest. And those ITAD processors in other countries probably have clients with U.S. operations. So I think there's partnership opportunities. I think there's downstream buying opportunities. So yeah, it's good to see more international companies coming to the conference.
Great. Thank you. And Ashley, how about you? Biggest takeaway or favorite moment of ITAD Summit 2025?
Yeah, so I like being asked last because I'm also able to say I agree with Casey and Miranda, and here's mine. So yeah, I would agree with everything that Casey and Miranda said. I think that the ITAD Summit is a great show to be able to learn and network with peers. Talk about what's happening in the industry. I think one of my takeaways was how much growth that we're having in the industry, and the potential and the opportunity that's ahead of us, and our need for collaborative partnerships. There was just a lot of themed sessions talking about partnerships. Miranda's session, other sessions, mine talked about collaboration as well, where we discussed just the strong need to have collaborative partnerships with our customers, with our vendors. And so the growth of the market, opportunity on the table, and the need for collaborative partnerships was, to me, the biggest thing that I walked away with.
Wonderful. No, that's great to hear. I know it's a conference that our company Dynamic usually attends every single year and is excited to continue that and just continue the growth within the industry in general. So I think you guys are each part of that, which is really exciting. And just want to say thank you again for coming on, but sharing all these just great takeaways from your panels at ITAD Summit 2025, just so we can continue to grow and educate everybody around the industry and how we can all partner together better. So thank you all so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.